Hi. So there's a whole trade war going on, and I'm just asking the same question as everyone else. How is this affecting LeBron's legacy, and how are tariffs supposed to help us? According to our president, one of the reasons is to chip away at our trade deficit. You see, America imports more than it exports. So the Trump administration wants the government to collect more money from the businesses that import stuff, so the government can make more than it spends. But the US government is notoriously bad with money. Corrupt spending, going over budget, constantly blowing cash on things like Diddy parties. The government loves to spend money on things no one asks for. So even if they get more money from tariffs, they're not going to fix their spending habits. You probably heard this a million times, but when a business has to pay more to import goods, they're not just going to pay the tariff and not make as much money. So whatever they're importing, groceries, electronics, clothes, all that shit is going to be more expensive. It might sound crazy, but the trade deficit is in fact not all that bad. It indirectly stimulates the economy. So when we have a trade deficit, we have other countries loan us money to buy bonds, which helps keep the interest rate low. They also buy assets and stocks, which they need US dollars to buy. So that helps fuel the growth of our businesses and even strengthens the dollar's value. Countries will also send their companies here, which adds to the economy, which pushes our companies to make better and cheaper stuff. Tariffs make other countries not like us so much, so they stop doing this. And one of the biggest bondholders in China has started selling US bonds in retaliation. That's bad because when they stop buying our debt, our interest rates go up. So loans and credit cards and all that shit becomes more expensive. And when the economy is slowing down and countries are no longer investing in our growth, the lack of reinvestment becomes a bigger problem. Since countries are just pulling out of the economy while it's already declining from the recession. So you could say if that's the case, then the economy is a bubble and disaster is just waiting to happen anytime there's a recession. And you would be right if it weren't for the fact that American companies are usually the best at what they do and lead the world in cutting edge technology. So the economy is destined to bounce back as long as America provides what other countries want at the end of the day. So while we're losing money on paper through the trade deficit, the money comes back in the form of investments that fuels our economy's ability to generate value. So it's a cycle where we buy from them, they invest in us, we grow, and so on. But when nobody's buying our bonds or investing in our firms, the trade deficit is just a deficit. The trade deficit just drains money from the economy and makes the recession worse. So now the big question is, will tariffs benefit us in the long run? Another big reason people advocate for tariffs is because they create new jobs and reopen new factories in the US again. But keep in mind that American labor costs way more than overseas labor. So if companies manufacture here, they'll charge more so they don't lose money, which for the third time makes everything more expensive. Because after World War II, America ran global manufacturing and was able to pay a sub-90 IQ plebe the wage to afford a house, a stay-at-home wife, and 3 kids. But that was because they worked in one of the only countries that wasn't bombed to shit, and actually has the economy better off because of the war. Since they built manufacturing plants across the country for tanks and shit, now they could switch to building cars and sell them to countries who couldn't, which was every other country. But countries eventually rebuilt their factories and offered like 20 Chinese workers the wage of one American worker. So American companies creamed their pants and moved production overseas so they could focus on higher value stuff like cutting edge technology, which needs smarter people to work on, which has been like Viagra for our GDP. And China's GDP had actually been stagnant for most of this decade. But now China's economy is growing again and ours isn't. So on one hand, tariffs incentivize the reopening of manufacturing and self-reliance, but they also send us into a recession and collapse our trading system. So yeah, thanks for watching.